Hello everyone, Chuckles here, and I am participating in the 2022 Asian Readathon. I know this is out of the blue and I haven't posted anything on here in years and my main channel in even more years, but there is going to be new content coming out on both channels now, starting with this. Since this is happening right now, I figured I would do this as soon as possible. So, the 2022 Asian Readathon is an event put on by a YouTuber that I'm subscribed to named Cindy Pham. Her YouTube channel is, it used to be Read with Cindy. She started out as a booktuber, and then she started talking about television shows and movies and doing commentary and other things like that. And so it wasn't just reading with Cindy, and so she changed the YouTube channel to With Cindy. Since she started YouTube in 2019, she's been putting this on every year. I didn't know about it until this year, and when she announced it, I was like, you know what? That sounds like a fun thing to do. May is Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and she is doing this every year during this month, a month-long readathon, in order to foster the reading of Asian books written by Asian authors, books about Asian characters, etc. And this was just the excuse I needed to finally get to reading some of the things that I've been not reading yet. Something that I'm sure a lot of you can relate to is I love reading, but I don't do it. I will say, oh yes, I'm going to read that, and 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 I'm definitely going to read that. And then something will distract me, or I will say, "Oh, I'm gonna definitely read this, but first," and then that "but first" becomes "but only." I'm positive this is mostly due to my ADHD, and somewhat due to the fact that I read slowly. I can read somewhat fast, for me at least. For example, The Hunger Games, back when it came out, I forget when that was, but I was a teenager. A lot of times I want to, if there's a film or television adaptation, I want to watch the adaptation first so that I don't have any expectations that will never be fulfilled. Either it's really good on its own terms, definitely, and then I can read the book and be like, oh, this is even better, but I still like that other thing. Or I can watch the film, judge it by its own merits, and go, this is absolute crap. And then read the book and go, oh yeah, I didn't even realize just how bad it was, but I still give it a fair shake. Aragon. But The Hunger Games, I decided, you know what? I actually want to, I forget why exactly I decided to do this, but I want to read the book first. By the time I decided that, it was getting close to when my family was planning on going to see the film in the theaters, so I got the book, and by the time I got it, it was like the day before we were going to see it. And I read the entire book in a day. I think it was just I think I started like midday, read through the night and into the next morning, and finished it by the time we went to see the film. Now, I know that's nothing compared to some people, but for me, that was super fast reading. But here we are. Now I'm going to actually do this, and well, I've been doing it now, and now I'm going to actually post this video, and I'm going to hold myself accountable now that we're 2 weeks and we're halfway done with the readathon, and hopefully I can get it done in the next 2 weeks. So, the readathon this year is themed. I believe that this is the first time it's been themed, and Cindy decided to base the theme off of Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's funny, without meaning to, over like a very short amount of time, I happened to watch 3 films in wildly different genres, wildly different tones, completely different films. Oma, I think that's how you actually pronounce it, Turning Red, and Everything Everywhere All at Once. Completely different, and yet somehow all 3 of them have this central theme of generational trauma affecting a teenage Asian American girl's relationship with her mother. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. But anyway, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Awesome film. If you haven't seen it, you should absolutely go see it. And the challenges for the readathon that Cindy made up are based on this film. So those challenges are: read a book by an Asian author, just generally speaking. Read a book featuring an Asian character who is a woman and or older. Again, this is based off Everything Everywhere All at Once, so Asian, and then Michelle Yeoh, she's a woman and she's older. I'm going to have to read this one. Read a book by an Asian author that has a universe you would want to explore, or a universe that is totally different from yours. This can be like fantasy or sci-fi, like a completely different type of universe, or just like a universe like you've never experienced living in this culture before, or having this kind of job, that kind of thing. Read a book by an Asian author that has a cover worthy of googly eyes. Googly eyes are a big deal in Everything Everywhere All at Once. And what she means by this is just a beautiful cover that you can't stop looking at, basically. And finally, a book by an Asian author that has big word of mouth or just highly rated, wherever books are rated. And when I watched the video and learned all about the readathon and things like that, again, it gave me the excuse to finally get to my backlog of books, including The Frangipani Hotel by Violet Kupersmith. Violet Kupersmith is a new author. I believe she's around my age. She is Hapa, as the Hawaiians say, Hapa Vietnamese. Her dad is Euro-American and her mom is Vietnamese. Whilst driving around in the car here in Nashville one day, I heard on the radio on NPR, they were talking to, I forget whether they talked to her or just talked about her, Violet Kupersmith. And at the time, they were talking about her debut novel that was coming out. I am reading this because it's on my shelf, and when I learned about her, I was like, oh, I want to get this book and then wait for her novel. Her novel is going to count for the readathon, because that's one of the rules of the readathon. When you read, not only do we want to encourage the reading of Asian books, but we also want to, I say we, like when I say we, I mean like as a communal reading experience. This is Cindy's thing, but it's like all of us together want to encourage the reading of Asian books in general, but also want to encourage the reading of Asian books from various Asian ethnicities. So if you read one book that counts toward whatever challenge of those 5, then the next book that you want to count towards one of those 5 or more has to be from a different ethnicity. So this pretty much covers every single one of the 5 challenges. It's a horror, and horror is a strong word. It's not. It is, but it's a ghost stories basically. This is a compilation of Vietnamese ghost stories, and it's really good. I'm halfway through it, and it's 2 weeks into the readathon. But like, this is what I'm telling you about procrastination. I got halfway through it in like just a couple of days, reading it casually after work. So I'm gonna be able to get through this in like the next day or two, and at which point I will move on to the main books that I'm counting for the challenge, because since only reading one ethnicity per book counts for overall getting all the challenges done, I'm going to just read that, just to read it, and then for the challenge, I'm going to read her debut novel that I was hearing about. Oh, she's coming out with this, and so it's fresh and hot off the presses. Build Your House Around My Body, which at this point, her story intrigued me, and hearing about Build Your House Around My Body intrigued me. I was like, I want to read that. And then when they mentioned her only other work so far is the Frangipani Hotel, I was like, oh, well, I'll get that too. So the Frangipani Hotel was just like an afterthought, like, oh, shit, since that's her first thing, I'll read that, and then I'll read the main novel, because the main novel was what I was interested in. But now, since then, I've completely forgotten what that book is, and that's fine. I just know that I was interested in it. I think it's probably a thriller or horror or mystery type thing, like the Frangipani Hotel, just a novel. Not an anthology, but a novel. Yeah, anthology, not compilation. I mean, I guess you could use either of those, but no, you can't, dummy. A compilation is when you take all different kinds of sources from all over the place that are not yours and put them together. Anthology is what it is. She made all the stories up herself. Build Your House Around My Body is what I'm going to read for the challenges. I don't know how many that will cover, but whatever doesn't get covered in there, I am almost certain will get covered in Iron Widow. And again, I talk about having an excuse to finally stop procrastinating. I've had my eye on this ever since the other YouTuber that I'm subscribed to, Shiran J. Zhao, talked about it. She is an author turned YouTuber. She started out with, whilst working on Iron Widow, she got heated on Twitter and came up with this just passionate diatribe over a series of tweets talking about how much she hated the live-action 2019, was it? The Disney's live-action Mulan. Series of tweets. They went viral. She actually got to talk to one of the screenwriters of the the animated Disney Mulan, which is much better. And altogether, like everything that came from that prompted her to being like, you know what, I'm just going to make a YouTube video and just put all this together into this big, expansive, like essay-style YouTube video. And that went even more viral, and now she has a YouTube channel in which she talks about Chinese culture and pop culture and different books and films and legends and things like that, all having to do with Chinese from her perspective as a Chinese Canadian. So it's really cool. And this is the book that she had been working on all that time. Now she's come up with a new one. I forget what that one's called, which is more of a young adult. This one is a fantasy sci-fi reimagining of the history of Wu Zetian. I know I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but the first or the only? I believe the only. Yes, the only female emperor in Chinese history. So it sounds to me like it's going to be very much like the Leviathan trilogy, except for Chinese. And I love the Leviathan trilogy. Alt history, World War I/World War II. It was really cool. And this, I think that's going to be super cool as well. And again, I've just been wanting to read it all this time, but just not. And now I finally will. So now that I've got this out there, what I'm going to do is post another video when I'm about to read via Audible. I don't have the physical copy of Build Your House Around My Body. I decided to get that on Audible. I will post another video when I'm about to read that and just talk briefly about what I thought about the anthology. I'm really loving it so far. I've gotten through like three or four stories, and then, like I said, it's halfway through. Then I'll talk about what I anticipate for Build Your House Around My Body. Again, I don't even remember. I don't even remember what the book's about, so I'm going to keep it that way and go into it cold. And then I'll do the same for Iron Widow, and then I'll do another video talking about the experience as a whole. So that's going to be 3 videos, yes. 3 videos, not counting this one. It's going to be the Build Your House Around My Body, Iron Widow, and then the overall experience of the whole thing. I'm going to record and then like step away from it and then record again. So in the video, you're just going to see me before I read it, and then I'll record again after I've read it, and I'll make that into one video, and I'll do that for both Build Your House and Iron Widow. And then the third video will be about just the whole experience and what I think about doing this, participating in it. After that, so in June, is when you will get the first video not book related on this channel, the Chuckles channel. Because having been away for a long time, I just noticed that a lot of people have been commenting on my Tascam video because I wasn't even paying attention to this channel. So I preemptively apologize, not preemptively, post-emptively apologize to everyone who has been trying to get my attention on the Tascam video asking questions. I hope you all got your questions answered. I'm going to answer them anyway. It's been, what, like 3-4 years now, but I'm going to address all the comments on the Tascam video now that I know that people have actually watched it, now that I'm actually paying attention to this channel again. I'm going to address all those comments and talk about the Tascam video and describe how I'm going to, on this channel, be going into more film equipment review type stuff, since that apparently is something that a lot of people wanted to watch. We'll see if they still want to watch it now that I've ignored them, but I promise I will not ignore you this time. I will not ignore you anymore now that I know that people actually watch that. We'll see if they watch again. And then there will be another video, or a video, on the main channel, the Afro Pictures channel, talking about the things that I am doing right now. Finally getting around to posting a new video after the pandemic, and now that I'm actually getting back into filming stuff. So, but I'll save that for when we get to it. So for now, for the rest of this month, you got 3 more videos to look forward to. Hopefully I will be able to actually get all 3 of them done in this month and get this whole readathon done in the next 2 weeks. So let me know if you're participating in the Asian Readathon, and if you're interested in doing something. I mean, I think you can still, even though it's halfway through, I think you can still join if you want to. Or just like go on to the, what's the website called? The Storygraph. Go to the Storygraph and check out all the books that are on there. Even if you don't want to participate or you just don't have time, you can still look at all the books that are on the Storygraph that are compiled. The Storygraph is a way for you to, okay, I've got these challenges done, so I'm going to input that into this little tab here, and it tracks my progress into all these books, and it lists all the books that people have, that everyone participating in the readathon have listed. Like, here's books by Vietnamese authors, here's books by Japanese authors, here's books by Hong Kong, Afghan, here's all these authors, and here's LGBT authors, and here's blah, 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 blah. I included a few books there myself. I included Kokoro, which is a book that I read when I was in high school. I, to this day, am amazed that I got through that book, and I was interested in it because it's very, Kokoro is very slow, very somber, very sad. Not the type of thing that I was really into at the time, except it's Japanese, and so I was into that. It's really good. It's very depressing. It was written in 1914, or published in 1914. I found it randomly in my house, one of my parents' bookshelves, and like, oh, what's this? And I read it for an English assignment that we were, I forget what the English assignment was, but Kokoro covered it, so I read it. I was also pleased to discover that there is a non-Asian authors category in the Storygraph for this readathon, because these are non-Asian authors that nevertheless center Asian stories or Asian characters. So I put Iron and Silk on there, which is another book that I found. I was wandering around my parents' room one day. I believe this was when I was even younger, and this book had like fallen down like behind the etagere or something. And it's called Iron and Silk. It was published in 1986, and Mark Saltzman, I believe, Euro-American dude who went over to China in the 80s and has a martial arts background, trained in various styles while over there, and like went to different masters, learning about the different styles of different swordplay and hand-to-hand fighting techniques, and just he was teaching English for 2 years, and just exploring the culture, meeting all kinds of people, having all kinds of adventures. Semi-fictionalized autobiographical account of his time there. So it's cool. And then I put the 3 books by Alison Goodman, Singing the Dogstar Blues, and the Pearls of Wisdom duology, which is Aeon and Eona. I don't know if Alison Goodman has any Asian blood in her. She's Australian. I don't know if she's Hapa or if, and I don't know. I just know that she loves to center Asian stuff in her books. Singing the Dogstar Blues is a time travel thriller type of thing, and it stars a half Aussie, half Japanese girl. And Aeon and Eona is very Chinese inspired, other Asian cultures too, but mainly like Chinese, and it's fantasy, and the fantasy elements are heavily based on the Chinese zodiac, which is really cool. So that was my contribution before I actually started reading. So if you want to check that out, please do. And otherwise, like and subscribe, drop a comment, and I'll see you in the next video as I start posting videos again.